Hey, everybody. Welcome back, Deeper Dive. James and I were having a fruitful conversation off camera and thinking about some of there are passages in scripture that are unsettling, and people like to gloss over them. And you've done a whole message on the I never knew you
Hmm.
passage, which is one of the ones that'll keep people up at night. When
Keeps me
if you
up at
have,
night.
if you have any actual fear of the Lord and you consider, then it gets kind of scary. But before we dive into that, I wanted to talk more about the idea of the father and son that
Hmm.
approach Jesus, right? Like
Hmm.
it's a pretty incredible moment, a moment of desperation. Um, I don't think desperation is a bad thing.
Hmm.
You had said early that people like to bring their rubble to the
Yes.
Lord and say, "Hey, can you rebuild this?" You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like you're supposed
Yes.
to be really good at building stuff. Can you rebuild this? But you're more impressed when somebody's got everything together and they say,
Hmm.
I do submit." And it's kind of like honestly, like when you talked about next week the Nicodemus story, that's sort of what Nicodemus does. I mean, he's got
Hmm.
things well in hand,
Hmm.
but he feels like maybe something's not quite right. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Which was that'll be a great thing to talk about next week. But I wanted to kind of cross the bridge with this guy a little bit when he says, "I believe, but help me with my unbelief or help me with my doubt." I wrote down these words, James, and you're free to kick me in the teeth if you want, but I almost heard him saying, "Convince me."
Hmm.
I I believe what I've heard, and I get all that, but convince me, like what do whatever, convince me. And I think people like they hear that and they're like, well, that's blasphemous. And I don't know that the Lord feels that way when we say it, because he's not saying do some magic,
Yeah.
make some more food out of the multiply the loaves again. Like, do those fun things. That's a
Hmm.
whole different mindset
Hmm.
than somebody who's just in shambles saying, convince me. I'm ready to believe.
Hmm.
I just I don't know where to go from here. I mean, I feel like a kindred spirit with that at times.
His I would say I didn't read it from the NIV. I can't remember it from the NIV, but I can remember it from the Message when he comes and says, "If you can do anything,
Right.
help me with my son." And the Message says it's so interesting. I don't have it in NIV right up with me right now. That Jesus says there are no ifs in belief, right? And because basically saying I can do anything, so there are no ifs. So take out your if. That could have been a great. That would have been a great title of the sermon right now. I
Yeah.
talked about big butts, but it could have been remove your ifs and your big butts.
Right.
Um, and then he says, "All right, I want to believe. Help my unbelief." Um, I think that that word, "I want to believe," help me with my doubts, help me with my unbelief. I think in a very innocent way, that could be show me the money. I don't think it was, and here's the only reason why I say, or I don't think it was the way I think of show me the money or show because I at least the way I envision this is that guy doesn't come to Jesus, at least the way I read that in context, as his first step. He, I think, is like many of us who go to all the wells of different things.
Yeah.
And finally, in the final desperation, he hears about this guy that has been rumored to heal people.
Well, he's the same as the lady with the issue of blood that
Yeah,
Luke speaks of.
yes. And so,
I've tried
and actually,
everything.
it's actually almost the same story again.
Yeah, I tried everything.
Yeah, I tried everything, and this is,
The,
and so
the
his doubt is probably earned doubt. He's been to all the shamans. He's been to all the doctors. He's taken the healing. Let's put in our context. He's taken the healing drugs. He's done everything. He's tried to pay for it, and in his desperation, And I think when you have your dying son in your hand, it's the most. I remember seeing Jerry Porter, my mentor, and his daughter Amy, and I remember the lengths that Jerry and Tony went through to beseech God for his healing for their daughter. It broke my heart. And we can Christianize things all we want to and say, oh, she finally got healed in heaven. Let me say to you, you only say stuff like that when it's not your daughter.
That's true.
You only say that if it's your daughter, you spend your life in trusted obedience, but always wondering, why not my daughter? It doesn't mean that you don't surrender that to God and say, God, you are sovereign. You know more than I know. But I think you have something back in the back of your head that says, why not my daughter? So I imagine that guy coming this way. And so I imagine that he had been to a whole bunch of places and nothing had happened. Because here's the deal. He could have prayed before he came to Jesus,
Yeah.
right? So he comes to Jesus, the one who is the word, who is the way, the truth, and the life. And he comes and I think that Jesus' statement about there are no ifs and everything like that, I'm not sure that was for him as much as it was for the people who are around watching. Because it seems like to me that he doesn't, he could have put on a facade of charade and said, I believe, I believe. You know, we do it. Oh,
Yeah.
I believe, I believe. I believe that he was just as honest as he could be. Lord, I want to believe. But you know what? I've seen enough stuff now. I've been enough places. And so I want to believe, but you're going to have to help me here.
Yeah. Convince me
Yeah.
because I'm open to it.
Yeah.
But and that's the other thing, like the beauty of, like you said, having probably tried everything else, he's been let down so many times.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the other side of it, which he was probably also told, you know what, this is your fault
Yeah.
or
Oh,
someone in
yeah.
your family's fault.
Yeah. Somebody sins.
Yeah.
Somebody displeased God.
So he's
Somebody.
carrying all that around. And then, and we do the same thing still, even though we
Yeah.
don't preach that, we feel it a lot of times. Like, this has got to be my fault.
Well, we call
So
it generational sin
yeah,
now.
that's true. Yeah, we love doing that. So,
you know,
so the question I have for you is: do you think that doubt cancels belief, or
no.
is it a precursor to belief?
I believe that doubt is a precursor to belief. And so I said this in the message. The problem is not doubt. The problem is what you do with your doubt. I think it's perfectly all right to go to God with my doubt, and I've done it. I've done it. This has been a hard season. Okay, so let me talk a little bit personally here. This has been a hard season. It's been a hard season for a number of reasons. Um, it's been a hard season because there are no rest periods anymore.
Mm,
There are no rest periods. There used to be a time in the church season where you had a rest period. You rested after Christmas. You rested after
mm,
Easter. That's gone because in our thing, some of the biggest things that we do come right after Christmas. Night to Shine and our conference, whatever we're doing for a conference. Those are really important time. Those are times where we can get people engaged because nothing else is going on. And you go right out of those two things and you go right to Easter. And you go right out of Easter. So I'm not gonna. You don't need any pity parties from me because I get paid to do this. So But I'm just saying to you, it's been a hard season, and I've gone to God and said, God, this does not look good, and I've prayed for the glimpse of grace. Right. So I prayed for the glimpse of grace. I don't know if it was doubt or is like, Lord, I know we're supposed to be doing this and everything like that, but I don't see it. Like the guy, I don't see it. And so 2 Sundays ago, it happened after the message. We had this thing where at the end of the message on Belong, I basically said, hey, if you want to belong, let's make this happen. And we had left the pool up. And we had these four sponsors. First of all, both the services were full, unusually full.
Mm.
And we had left the pool up, and four young adults came and got baptized, gave their lives to the Lord, and got baptized after the service.
Mm.
And so people stuck around for 30 minutes after the service because we had to go get these young ladies dressed and all that kind of stuff to get baptized. So this week that just happened, we were going through this. We have Snow Creek happen, and there's a $51,000 deficit for that. And just so for people who are listening, who would say, "Well, why didn't you put money up for that?" We did. We went through about $300,000 reserves because everything hit at the same time. The Havacs went bad. Everything hit at the same time. The state came and said you had to do all of this stuff to your pond and your waterways, all of that. Let's put that aside. So we're going into the budget year, and there's all kind of stuff going on, and we got this 51,000 that we're trying to raise and everything like that. And I'm presenting the budget last night. Yesterday afternoon, or the day before yesterday, I get a call. I would love to give a big gift, this person said. How do I do that? I call them back because, if you have a big gift to give, you get a call right back. Just want you to know. You don't get put on the wait list of all the calls I got to make.
I'm sorry, there's a bad phone in James' office. It's a red phone under a dome.
You don't get on the wait list because I got a call back list. But if you got a big gift, you jump right to the front. No, I'm joking. Trent's on vacation, so I needed to answer. So it was as if God was saying, and this is what I'm saying about help my unbelief. As if God was saying, James, you do know that I own the cattle on 1,000 hills, and all the hills are mine. And so I think we can be in that, I believe, help my unbelief. I don't think it's as specific as that. I think we go through these periods in our life where we know what the truth of God's word says. We know the church is his, and we're just being stewards of it at the moment. We know that he can provide. We know passages like, I've never seen the righteous forsake. We know all of that kind of stuff. Right. But there are days in the journey of a senior pastor, of a missionary in the Philippines running a ministry, of a lay person praying for their kid. There are moments where we get to that point and we're going to the Father and saying, God, I believe you can do this, but show me. Not a show me from the perspective of I dare you or I need you to prove yourself, but from this perspective of the dad who's tired and worn out and who comes to Jesus, maybe not even believing that he has the right to step in the presence of Jesus and say, I want to believe, help me with my doubt. And so 2 times God has shown up and helped me with my doubt.
And I want to transition into, you didn't bring this story up, but Thomas, who gets a bad rap for doubting a lot of times. And I did a message on Thomas at one of the local churches there, New Post. It was who gratefully supports us.
Good church, good pastor.
Yeah, Brandon's coolest.
Great guy.
Anyway, I said the funny thing is, what if you love somebody so much and you believe in somebody so much, but things happen that just like they don't seem to match up to like where are you? those moments of silence, you feel like the moments of I'm alone in this and I don't know where to go, I don't know where to turn. I don't feel the comfort that I normally
Mhm.
would. And that's a type of doubt that I think scares a lot of people.
Mhm.
And to me, the way Jesus responds to this father and to the crowd, and then the way Jesus responds to Thomas, also saying, "Man, come and go ahead."
Yeah.
It shows this desire of the Lord to say, you know what, I understand
Mhm.
what you're feeling, and I want you to know that it doesn't offend me. I love you enough to say, I come see for yourself. And it creates this transcendent bond that it's unlike anything else.
Let me take you someplace, and you can do the same thing that you did, that you said to me earlier. If you don't agree with this, speak up. But Jesus is in the garden. We're going to talk about this in a couple of days.
Mhm.
Jesus is in the garden. He knows everything that he knows. He knows what's happening here. And in his humanness, he says, Lord, if you're willing, remove this cup from me. But not my will, your will be done.
Mhm.
Is it not the same? Is it not the same thing? Is it not the same ask? I've known some people say, James, you're crazy. But I think the people who say you're crazy um, do more about looking at Jesus in his divinity
Right.
and have a hard time looking at him in his humanity. And as I made this controversial statement that I got called on, I literally got called on this. I made this controversial statement that, and I'm trying to remember it now, that Jesus did not know in his humanness the full details of what would happen after he was laid in the tomb. That he didn't know all the details. Did he believe his father raised him from the dead? Absolutely. But what happens between the time that the Godhead decides from the creation of the world that we're going to go and we're going to put on human flesh, skin, and bone, and we're going to make the ultimate sacrifice, keeping the promise that we made to Abraham? What happens there? In his humanness, I get the statement, Father, remove this cup from me. Surrender trust, but not my will. Your will be done. It's the ask. If you can do anything, can you take care of my son?
Mhm.
It's the ask. And then surrender trust.
And that's what I was kind of trying to get at also. First off, I don't think anything you said was wrong. I would actually even take it further sometimes, probably, which is just my nature to do that. But I agree with you. I have my thoughts on the whole tomb thing. I'll talk to you off camera because
Mm-hmm.
that would open up a can of worms I don't want to open here. But
Not at this juncture.
not at this juncture. It'd be
In the
unwise
words
to
of
do that. But
H.W. Bush, not at this
but yeah,
juncture.
a 1,000 points of light. I think you know I think we fear doubt. We see it as like the antithesis of faith, and I
Mhm.
just disagree with that. I think doubt, like how they say
The
pain is weak.
antithesis of faith is fear,
Yeah, I think
not
well,
doubt.
it's like when people
Yeah.
say pain is just weakness leaving the body,
Hmm.
and I think doubt is exactly that. It's
I
it's
like
it's
that.
faith. It's faith entering the body. It's
Like that.
making making a way. Because if you don't care enough to doubt, that's the real problem.
Yeah. Well, go back to Thomas. Go back to Thomas. And here's what we don't understand. It's in the honesty of doubt. Now, here's the deal. I think Thomas was representative of all those people that were there. I think
Yeah, the only one
all of
that
them
that that,
doubted.
that had
Maybe
the
except for
cojones to
John,
say it.
who loved Jesus more than
Yeah,
anybody else in the world.
or so he wrote. Yeah.
Maybe except for John, but I think all of them were doubting, and Thomas was honest enough to speak his doubt out. And because he was honest enough to speak it out, Jesus came back to have an audience with him alone. And Thomas leaves that, according to the tradition, he leaves that place and he goes to India and he plants the church in India and in India and changes everything, brings a church there. So God, because of his honest doubt, decides to have an audience with him. What I think, what does that say to us? It says to me, when I'm going through doubt, there's no point in hiding it. Speak it out, take it to God, and allow God to do what he wants to do with it. Sometimes he's just going to say, you know what? I know you're doubting. Believe. Sometimes he says, test me in this and see, won't I? Sometimes he comes and says, here I am. See it. Put your hand in my side. Touch my wrist. Stop doubting and believe. And sometimes he shows up in the service and he convinces people, and people make decisions, and it removes the doubt from a pastor's heart and gives him whatever he needs to continue to go to the next level.
Mm. So I think the moral of the story is that, you know, doubt should not be, you don't run from doubt.
Yeah.
Like you said, bring it to the Lord.
Yeah.
Don't sit on it either, and don't pine over it, but bring it to the Lord and say,
yeah, don't make it, don't let it become a barrier between you and God. Let it be the impetus of you taking it to God.
Yeah. It becomes the precursor of faith. It's a good, you know, I don't think it's a terrible thing. And I, you know, I know that's hard for a lot of people to feel like, so, I mean, one of the things I just wanted to say this because you said it, and I like the way you said it. Faith is not the absence of doubt.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's one thing that I think people need to hear, that, you know, again
Mm-hmm.
and again, it's not the absence of doubt. And a lot of people are scared to admit that. So, you know, and like you said, fear is actually the antithesis of the faith, and doubt, people fear that, and it ends up leading to a stumbling block that it should not rightfully have the power to do. But we give it that power because it impedes our faith, which it shouldn't. But I just a couple of the last things to wrap up here. Um, I like when you talked about like I think it's interesting people like where they sort of like list the points of agreement with Jesus. You know, it's like, yeah, I agree with you on that. I agree with you. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure about that, but I do agree with you on that. And as long as we agree mostly, then I think people feel like, oh, I'm good. I mean, we're mostly in agreement. You know what I mean? There's a couple of them, but we're mostly in agreement. And you know, you like
that's
to
the
give a
biggest
strong
crock of bull.
It is bullcrap, and you
It
can't.
really is.
And God won't accept it.
Yeah,
you know, it's like the mostly is, and that's I used to. You know, you've said it before, and I've said it before, from the stage, off the stage, and everything. God's not going to fight you for the throne of your heart. You know, He's not going to stand there and beat you and say, "Give me back my throne." And that's what ends up happening is from our throne, we tell Him like we're pretty similar.
Arrogance of speaking to the God who created you, the God who controls the next breath that you will take, if you take a breath at all, right? The arrogance of saying, well, it's like a contract agreement. Well, I'm gonna take and put my initials next to this. Well, this I don't like, so I'm not gonna initial that. But I'm gonna initial the next line, and got 10 out of the 15 lines I've initialed.
We're pretty close. We're
Yeah.
pretty close to a deal here. I,
Yeah.
I honestly, I think that's the moral of the Abraham story to me,
Hmm.
is that I think, yes, was Abraham saying, okay, I'll go? Was it counted to him as faith? Yes.
Hmm.
But along the way,
Yeah.
Abraham got to the place where he's like, you said
Yeah.
that you were going to give me a son and you haven't kept your end of the bargain.
Hmm.
Consequently, I'm going to take it upon myself and I'll make it happen. And then the whole Isaac and
Yeah.
mountain thing is God saying, okay, that we're not in a transactional position here. So did I fulfill the agreement? Yes. Now I'm going to take it away from you. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Because that's not the way we operate. I don't have to do anything. I'm not beholden to you.
Yeah.
And that's not the way it works. And it's an extreme example of God pointing out to people like, I keep my word because of who I am, not because I owe you anything.
Yeah. And here's the deal, and you've heard this said, and I don't know if you agree with it or not. When the gift becomes more important than the giver, then there needs to be a reestablished order of things.
I do agree with that.
And so God
And I think that's one of the
reestablishes the order of things.
I think that's one of the big problems in the modern church is that
Yeah.
the concept of salvation has overridden the lordship and who God is.
Hmm.
And I think that's a problem.
Yeah.
We are hungry for, as you have called it, the get out of hell free card. We're hungry for that without understanding the ramifications and who has made this possible and in what way. And we're just not good at telling the story because it doesn't sell well. It's not a good commercial. It would suck in the Super Bowl ads.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so like, and because of that, oh man, I could go off on a real tangent on this, but the anyway, the point is that we have, because of that, the message itself has become watered down where people are just saying, yeah, I just want to be saved. Well, and then what? Well, I don't
Yeah.
want to talk about that. There's no and then what. I'm going to just count me as good and then let's move on.
And if there's a fallacy to the hell, if there's a fallacy to the fear of hell, fear of God thing, the fallacy is this: that somehow we believe that getting our get out of hell card is the end all and be all of what it means to be a person of faith. We're not called to only be a person of faith. We're called to be a follower, a disciple. He didn't say go and make people of faith. He said go and make disciples,
yeah,
and teach them to obey.
Yeah.
Right. And so we've done really good. This is the evangelical movement. I'm not saying it was bad, but the reason why Billy Graham decided to have churches at all his crusades was he knew that unless people get in Bible believing churches, all they're going to be is people who come and have a crisis experience,
right,
and bring God their stuff. So they'll have a savior. They'll have an experience, a crisis experience with a savior, but that savior will not be their Lord.
Yeah. I mean, I just, I know for a fact, if fear of punishment worked, then the Crusades would have saved the world and we would have been done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't work. Fear of punishment.
Well, it works for a little while.
Well, I mean, but it produces no desire to get any closer. You just you actually want to get away.
Yeah,
I'll say whatever I got to say. Now get away from me. Leave me alone because you scare me.
The famous story from my childhood is my brother watching The Thief in the Night.
Right.
And when the guillotine comes down on a little girl and her balloon goes up in the air, and my pastor gives the altar call, the altar is filled with people for about a week. And then those people go right back because that is a response of the moment. Right. Now, everybody, I mean, you see the guillotine come down, the balloon goes up in the air, you hear no noise. I mean, that was pretty effective cinematography.
It's very emotional. You're right about that's why youth camps work so good.
Yeah.
You're exhausted, you're hungry, you can't see straight. Right. You're like, get down to the altar.
And you have a Thursday night, and you have a Thursday night service, baby. And Friday you're
uh,
going home and you came to do the work.
then they come on Sunday, tell your story like, I'm
Well, here's
so
the deal.
tired.
Here's the great news of the gospel is this. I remember Buddy saying this a little while when I was executive pastor at Selling Fields, and I was trying to clean up coffee stains because coffee stains all over the place. And he took me to a chair and said, "Here's the guy that sits here," because Buddy never forgets a name, and he showed me the coffee stains, and he said it took this guy 6 or 7 times to raise his hand. But it took after, and I'm paraphrasing here, it took after this time.
Right.
And it transformed his life. The good news about even the camp things or whatever, and maybe even this statement, this conversation we're having about doubt and obedience and faith.
Yeah.
Sometimes we take what I call little steps to get to the big step. And sometimes those little steps are riddled with doubt, and we get to the big step. We never hear what happens to the guy and the son after that. We don't know the rest of the story.
Right.
We know the rest of the Nicodemus story.
Mm-hmm.
We get to see Nick at night come in the broad daylight to receive Jesus's body with Joseph Arimathea and to make that happen. We don't get to we get to see what happens with the I'm going to talk Sunday also about Mary that anointed Jesus's feet,
right?
And we get to see her. We get to see what happens with Nick. We get to see what happens with the Mary who is worshiping while Martha is running around. I'm going to talk about those 3 people. Mm-hmm. But we don't get to see what happens with this man and his son. My sense would be that this man and his son become followers on the way.
Yeah. It's possible that they were in the upper room at Pentecost.
Yeah.
It's possible that they were founding members of the church in Jerusalem. And, there's a lot of possibilities and things that could happen, but eventually we'll know the story, which will be a cool thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that's a good wrap up. So next week we're talking about
we're talking about 3
becoming.
stories. We're talking about a tree, a crowd, and a table. Okay. So we're not going to do becoming. We're gonna take a break from becoming. It's still the Next is Now series, but we're gonna do the Next is Now Easter.
Okay. And
so in all 3 messages, next Sunday, Palm Sunday, Good Friday, and Good Friday we're gonna talk about running around in the dark. No, excuse me. Good Friday we're gonna talk about done, and done.
Got it. Okay.
It is finished. And then on Sunday we're gonna talk about running around in the dark. Nice. And the idea with all of those is we keep on talking about next, and Jesus keeps on saying, "No, not next, now."
Now, right?
Nicodemus, today we're going to your house. Right. Not tomorrow, next night, next week. Today we're going to your house.
I love that story. It's one of my favorites. So
yeah, Nick at night.
Zacchaeus also. You mean yeah. So anyway, I'm looking forward to it. That's gonna be great.
Zach and Nick.
This is a great season. And I just like the way it's heading. So it's very exciting. Thanks for watching, everybody. Again, I hope this has sparked some thoughts or some questions but I just want to say if it does produce a crisis, don't bear it alone because you're not meant to. The reason why you're even listening to this is because there's a community of faith and a community of people that are willing to do this with you.
Yeah. Get out of the road and get in the circle.
And bring your doubts here, and you can pile them up with ours, and we'll go to Jesus together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I would just I would say that I think this is one of the best ones that we've done because I think this is very relatable. It's practical and theological. So so if you know people, push this one out. Say to people, you need to listen to this.
And there's a couple of hard words in it, which I think is not a bad thing either.
Hard words are good.
Yeah, it is good. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you back next week. We love you, and we're pulling for you. Pray for us. We'll pray for you. See you soon.